So, hi guys, my name is Luca, and today I'll be presenting some of the tools I've built in the last year. So I've been using Houdini for about 3 years now, and I've always had just like random bits of code and like small assets lying around. And last year when Intagma presented the mobs toolset, I thought like, maybe I could like gather my stuff and like package it into assets, and that's what I came up with, and I call it the LYNX toolset. For now, it's only made up of 3 larger Houdini assets, and hopefully I will also expand to other software packages. Today I will present 2 different tools. Maybe we'll also look at the third one. So I'll quickly show you a video. So the first tool is a general purpose force field. I actually got the idea from my coworkers when I trained them from switching from Maya to Houdini, and they had a bit of trouble adjusting to the Houdini forces. So I'll first show you a demo, and then I'll do a live demo of the asset. Yep. I forgot to mention this. So all the stuff you're going to see today, you can download for free on my website. It's made in the Houdini Effects licensed version, so you can use it in all of your productions. My current employer is allowing me to do this in my free time. So in the future, it might get locked down to the indie license, but up to now, everything is done in the fully licensed Houdini. So feel free to download this stuff and play around with it. You can find it on my blog, just on my website. I'll also put the link on the meetup page. So here you can see the tools I'm presenting. And if you click on the blog posts, you'll get the download links down here. Like you get the demo, a tutorial, and like the download links and also the demo files, which I'm going to show right now. You can also get the assets in unpacked format on my GitLab page. And again, if you have any feedback, suggestions, or just want to know something, yeah, you can get back to me. I also, if you just go to blog resources, there's also a link to the Trello page, which has like a rough layout or roadmap of things I'm looking forward to implement in the future. All right, so let's get into the first demo. So I'm in the DOP context right now. I'm just going to demo all the stuff with particles first. And actually, yeah. Again, the main idea behind this force was to make it more simple to have a simple force field in Houdini, which has a bunch of like abilities built in. So this force field always goes into the top of your solvers. It works on all kinds of geometry. It works on volumes. It works as a wind field. You can enable the enable mass density checkbox like with all your other force fields. And the aim was to basically take all the other force fields and package them into one. The version I'm showing today is actually the newest version I released a couple days ago. And what you didn't see, what I didn't put into the video yet was that it now actually also has curve support, which I'll show later on. So if I drop the force field down, this is what I get out of the box. So by default, it just masks to the shape that you select in the Shape tab. If I disable the mask, then it's just a globally applied force field. So if I say want to use this as a gravity field, I can just also have this preset, so I can just select gravity geometry, and then it's a default geometry, or like it replaces your default geometry force. So let's re-enable the force. you can simply transform the force the way you want to. So you have handles right here. You can scale it. The newest version also has, I added the pivots. So now you can rotate around pivots. Then let me reset that. Then sweeping is also built in right into the box, out of the box. So you can sweep your geometry. Under the hood, it builds VDBs. So sweeping forces it to rebuild the VDBs every frame. So that might be a bit expensive. A workaround for that, if you have multiple forces, is that you can actually link the VDB data that's used under the hood, but I'm not going to show that. You can look that up on the tutorial on the website if you want to. I also have visualizers built in too. So if I enable all of this, I can see what my force is doing. Let me scale it down a bit. So right here I have visualizers which show the force direction. Here you can choose how the force should act. Here you also have a fall-off curve. And again, right off the box, you get all of this in the viewport, and you can preview your force before you start simming. Then I also have noise support, something like that. And yeah, down here you also can manipulate or let the force manipulate through the volume attribute. So here you can push it along the force volume. So if I, let's say, take a torus, I can push my geometry along the normals of the torus. Or around, if I want to. So let's see if we can see that. Well, it's a bit hard to see. Yeah, the rest is pretty self-explanatory, I would say. Up here, you can also mask your visualizer. So let's say if I tweak and turn on all of these things, I have a bunch of controls, and I can say, let's display only the orbit around axis guides. Oops, did I type that in right? Whoops. Okay, I probably have a typo. Oh, doesn't matter. English keyboard. No, oh, crap. So yeah, that's the force field. So you can also just right out of the box randomize your the force field strength. So if you want to break up your simulation a bit, just turn that on, and then it randomizes the strength per point. The seed it uses is controlled by the seed attribute, so you can also feed in custom seeds. And again, you can just bind it to volume, to geometries, to everything at once. You can also bind it to custom geometry and fill in the fields right here. Let's just quickly toggle through the presets. An interesting one is the Vex one. So if I toggle this, then you may have also seen this in the video. Then I can add, then I can, for example, create groups by the masking shape. So that's a really quick way to create groups in the DOP context, which you can then use in other nodes. And now, let's see. Oh yeah, and you can of course also feed in custom shapes. So if I go to custom over here, I could put in any geometry I want. You have to feed in the closed geometry. So let's see, if I put the pig head, for example, I get the pig head, and of course I can just also slice it if I want to. Right now, if I have the mask turned on, then the force only acts in the mask shape, of course. But right here, I can also tell it to act outside of the mask. So if I turn this on, and let's turn this on and this, and you can see I actually get a fall off outside of the mask shape, and I control it via these controls. If I click the invert button, then it inverts the whole shape, even outside of the force shield mask. So if I turn this off and click invert and reverse this ramp, then it's only inside the ramp shape. But if I click the invert shape button, then it actually acts everywhere. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Okay, then I'll quickly demo the curves. So this was the latest feature I added, which is curve support. The main benefit, again, to the internal ones is that you can use it on volumes and geometry at the same time, so you don't have two different nodes to do that. Again, you can also transform the curves, and then it just works out of the box. You don't actually have to push anything along the path, so I can actually use this to, for example, drive my like my wind noise. So if I turn this on, then I only have noise in my curve shape. And if I were to turn on carving, then I can travel along and start triggering something. Again, all the other things still work, so you can reverse your curve, you can invert the shape, you can remap the fall off, etc., etc. Also, the benefit to the internal curve force is that you can actually control, I think, yeah, the radius per curve force, so, and also the strength along curve and fall off per curve force. So if I turn this on, I also have a bunch of handy guides again. So if I turn this on, I can, for example, make my orbit force greater than the global force. And again, this all still works. Yeah. So this is the demo with particles. Again, you can just feed it into any solver. It always goes into the top, so there's no fussing around on the bottom anymore. You have to, for volumes and gravity, you actually have to use two different gravity presets. So that's why I have the preset gravity geometry and gravity volume. The only difference is that it actually toggles the mass density button for the volumes. So this, yeah, these two, the gravity presets, work exactly like the internal gravity fields that you usually drop down after the solvers. And right here, I'll just show it again with volumes. Let's see what I've plugged in. Up here, I just have a like orbit-like force, and let's visualize this. If I just play this like right out of the box, you get a controllable, yeah, force field. Okay, so any questions?
Are there ways to create magnetic field lines like on a ferromagnet? You know, they closed together. The force field come out of a ferromagnet. They do.
No, you would have to do that with like custom wrangles and feed in that velocity field, I think. Yeah. Oh, okay, I'll repeat the question. The question was, can you create, with this force field, a effect like, what is it called? Ferromagnetic force field, like magnet field. And the answer is, unfortunately, no, because that's like a very custom velocity field. Yeah, so that's the first tool. Then let's head on to the second one. And I'll first again play a demo. All right. So the second tool is a tool set comprised of multiple assets. And the idea kind of originated from that at work we do a lot of jobs where we have to create like fabric and weave patterns. And about like 2 years ago, before we started using Houdini, we used to do it in Maya, which was really a pain in the ass. And back then, I kind of tried to build a more modular approach. And at the end of last year, when I thought, let's make this tool set, I thought, yeah, that would be a good fit. So I kind of modularized the whole thing and like made it more stable and try to make it have the best performance as possible. So that's what I came up with. And yeah, those are the LYNX fabric tools. So I'll just walk through creating a fabric pattern. You can feed in any pattern you want. By default, I also have this LYNX fabric pattern node, which just allows you to create like weave-like patterns. And basically, you get a profile curve. And then you can control the width, height, offset to like tweak it. Oops. And yeah, easily reverse those curves. But like I said, you can also just feed in custom geometry. So if I select this and then feed it in here, then this node simply just adds the width attributes. And that's pretty much all it. The other things are just the height and like width along the strand. When you have the pattern, you just feed it into your weave node, and the other input has to be some kind of geometry. So here I've just taken this grid, just put some color on it, and like baked the texture to the vertices because you can also like transfer all the color attributes through all these fabric nodes. So let's say you have a character and want to really like render the t-shirt as like fibers for close-ups. Simply just plug this in and it will pipe all those attributes through. All the geometry creation is done on a single frame. All of these nodes, or not all of them, but some of them have this rest frame, and that rest frame just determines the frame where all of the geometry generation is done, and then on succeeding frames, the geometry is just transformed. So if I click on here, then I get this pattern. And if I turn on the noise or manipulate the offsets, it's a bit slower because it has to bool the whole pattern to the UV twice. So if you want to def something, like do it on a low resolution because all the noise scales with the tiling. So I can pretty much control everything here. I can dial in a bit of noise. I could, let's see, like rotate it. And then if I'm done, I could just like bump this up to something desirable, and then it will cache. A couple days ago, someone gave me the feedback to make this node cacheable, because every time because like I said, it calculates all the geometry on the rest frame, but if I were to reopen this file, then it would have to recook the initial geometry creation. So now you can dive into this geometry and like add your own file cache solutions here, cache that out, and then it only has to bake that geometry once, and then just the succeeding step is to just reproject it onto your final geometry. Yeah. So this is how you create weave patterns. The next step is usually to weave around those weave patterns with some sort of profile. Let's hope it doesn't crash. So this uses the new UV pack node. So if I scatter more points, then they will just be packed into the shape I input. I can also input custom shapes like this, and simultaneously also input custom points and then have those interact with the other points that are scattered. So here I can create my profile and then plug that into the thread node. And the thread node then weaves that profile around those other curves. So let's let that cook. So as you can see, it cooked quite a while, but did it work? Uh-oh. Dum, dum, dum. Let's see. Let's use this one. I don't know. Broke something. Yeah, again, it just cooks on the rest frame, and if I play this, I get pretty good feedback. And if I want to transfer the attributes, I can just click on that checkbox. Then it takes a tiny bit longer because it has to run the transform attributes or like copy those specific attributes. So then, yeah, you could just transfer those attributes from your source geometry. Let's see. So those were the pattern nodes, weave nodes, thread profile nodes, threading nodes. Again, you can really customize those settings, but I'm not going to go through those. You can like randomize the offsets, the twists, add a bit of noise along the curve, etc., etc.
Would you like show us a close-up of the crossing?
Yeah, sure. So this pattern up here was made like that on on purpose to intersect, because I also have a built-in detangling. So if I zoom in right here, again, it also does the detangling on the rest frame and then just reprojects it onto the deforming geometry. So right here, it detangles the curves. And you can also smooth it if you want to. Okay. Let's see. Again, here are some other nodes which show the examples which you saw in the video. So you can adaptively resample the curves. So if I switch here I have this custom curve which sets my segment length attribute, and the resample node then actually resamples adaptively based on that node. Alternatively, you can also resample based on bounding box. And here you can choose if it should keep curves which have like a changed point count, a higher point count, or a lower point count. And internally, the thread node also, whoops, that was the broken one. Internally, the thread node also uses that resample button, so that's why you have the, okay, what it has to recook. That's why you have the like same settings right here, and it intelligently resamples based on the twist count. So that's the resample node, and in the end, if you say you don't want to like render as curves, you can always just plug it into the fabric convert, and then it will put some UVs on it and convert it to geometry. And the profile of the geometry is controlled by this input shape. So you could also just input custom shapes. Yeah. So any questions? No? So you guys want to see the last tool too, or should we wrap it up?
Yes, definitely.
So the last tool is actually a pretty small one in comparison to the other ones. And the idea behind this was to get a grip on your initial velocities before simulating stuff. So there are two options in this node. So you can either set velocities based on edge selections, or by default, if you enable this checkbox, it just takes all the unshared edges. And then you can tweak that stuff by like giving it noise, rotating it. So a good example of this is I have a shape like this, and I want some custom tendrils. If I go in here and let that zoom through, then I can like get a fine-tuned control of where the initial like emission or velocity emission takes place. Let's go back here. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these settings, but basically you could just add noise. You can set the tiling. there are two ramps. The first one is like a titleable ramp, and the second one also always goes from start to end. So if I uncheck this, and let's see. If I take something like that, whoops. Oh, that's it. Uh-oh, let's see if that works. I take a selection like that, then I get, yeah, a velocity vector around that. The second option is to actually groom your velocities. When I initially released this, I actually forgot to disable like the caching, so it was a bit laggy. So if you download it, or by any chance downloaded it back then make sure to re-download it, because it's now less buggy because of that. So I can just groom my velocities with the normal groom tools, and then use that again for emitting stuff. So here are all the like standard tools. So if I say, let's just emit here in the middle, I could do that, or if I want to cut it, yeah. And then again, just feed this into your solvers and you're good to go. So over here, I just have, this is like an example with a smoke sum. If I click up here, oops. Again, I just set up some velocities, and then I'm emitting from those. Whoops. Well, did I spell it correctly? Oh. Yeah, there you go. So right out of the box, you know where you're getting your emissions. Yep, so that's the third tool. I hope on making further tools in the future. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, just let me know. And thanks again for Side Effects and Rise and Rodeo and MucHUG for hosting these previous events and hopefully future events. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, just contact me. And again, you can download all of these for free on my website. Yep.
Great.